Hey guys, a little bit of a long video, but it's a teaching video. And I really hope you'll find a time where you can sit down and watch this video and learn, because I really go over biochar, I talk about Humichar, and help you learn and understand exactly how we use it, what it is and what it does. I figured out a couple ways to explain it that I think helps a little bit. I just grabbed some stuff. I went in the shed. We'll do a class. The girls come over later. I guess I'll put that up. I walk you through the vegetable garden a little bit. But I talk about mainly about biochar and the Humichar and how this process and how this product is so specialized, and especially for your lawn, because you can't get biochar into your lawn because you're not tilling it up. It's so important to understand that. So hope you have a little time to watch the video. Hope you enjoy it. Click subscribe. If you haven't gotten the Bermuda Lawn Guide, get the Bermuda Lawn Guide. And in the description, I'll put a link below. One link that'll take you to a web page, and there you can see the Bermuda Lawn Guide. You can see where to get Humichar. You can see everything on that one link. So hope you have the time. Watch the video. Hope you enjoy it. Talk to you later. Doc. Hey guys, Doc. Today we're going to do a video about Humichar and biochar, and I'm going to break this into two sections. One's going to be an educational section. I figured out a way to sort of explain biochar so that you guys, a lot of people don't grasp the full concept of what biochar is and how it works both in gardens and on lawns. And then I'll actually show, the girls are going to come over tomorrow and we're going to put out Humichar on all the lawns. So I'm going to put that on video, because we've got 4 lawns to put it out on. So Humichar can be put out anytime during the growing season. There's no nutrients in it. It's a soil improver. We're going to take this red crappy clay soil and we're going to try and turn it darker and darker into this nice, wonderful soil. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dig up a section of my lawn so that we can use it as an example. So hold on. Okay, so this really isn't even a good section of my lawn. This is way over in the corner. This area has had 2 or 3 applications of Humichar over the past 8 months, and I'm just going to pull up a chunk of this soil and compare it to a chunk of soil that has not had any Humichar. So let's look at that first. All right. So hopefully what you can see is you can see a darkening of the soil. So if you go right up here is the thatch layer, and then as we go down, it's going to be really dark and start to turn back into red clay. But the important thing is biochar only works where? It only works in the root zone. That's the only time it'll benefit your turf. So that's why we have to get it from here down to here, and I'll explain how we do that today. But you can see it's darkening. Now let me grab a piece of dirt that doesn't have any Humichar, and maybe you can see the color difference here. But there is a very distinct color difference between especially the upper soil that has the Humichar and this soil which has no Humichar treatment on it. It starts to turn darker brown, almost like a garden soil. And that's what our goal is, to get that carbon down in here. But how do we do that on a lawn, since carbon chunks won't move into the soil? So let's take this over into the shed. I got thunderstorms coming, and we'll start the education part. After this, the girls will do an application. Hey guys, I hope the echo's not too bad in here. I didn't bring a mic. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to run through this pretty quick, so hold on. First of all, what is biochar? Take a piece of wood, put it inside a container where there's no oxygen, and heat it. Heat it, 400 to 800 degrees. Everything inside of it, the water and everything that's organic, will turn into a gas. That gas then escapes, goes into a secondary container, or place where those gases are burned off. Here's what you might be able to envision. Have you ever watched a wood burning fire and heard a hissing sound? Psst. You look over and there's a blue flame shooting out the end of a log? That's pyrolysis. That's exactly how they make Humichar. they take everything that's organic inside of wood or whatever material it is, they superheat it till everything turns into a gas. And then at that point, they burn the gas off. If you, quote unquote, burn wood without the presence of oxygen, what's left? Well, if you burn it with oxygen in a fire, it turns to ash. If you do it in this special process, the only thing that's left is carbon, a carbon skeleton. Let me show you the carbon skeleton. That's what it is. It's very tinny sounding. It almost sounds like glass. Very shiny, and you can basically eat this stuff. There's nothing in it but carbon. And when you put that under a microscope, what you're going to understand is that you've opened up a huge amount of surface area. You've opened up all these super billions and billions of pores, channels and grooves where everything can hide. Okay, so now we've made our biochar. Biochar has two main characteristics. And this is the simple way to understand this or to explain it. Biochar acts like a sponge and a coral reef at the same time. So, biochar is going to act like a sponge. It's going to act like a sponge and a coral reef at the same time. The spongy part is going to absorb things, water, nutrients, everything. It's going to attract them in. The coral reef part is going to be a place for living things to hide. So it's kind of a two-part phenomenon that happens in biochar. Now, let's explain the difference between biochar in soil and biochar in turf. This is soil. I can till this and I can turn this and I can add things to it, and then I can plant my plants in here. So what that means is I can take my biochar and I can break it into little pieces and I can put it into the soil. Same thing, I can take my coral, I can break it up into little pieces and put it into my soil. Well, when it goes into the soil, because of the characteristics of the sponge and coral, what's going to happen? It's going to become almost a negative. That means that it's going to attract water, it's going to attract nutrients, and it's going to attract the good living organisms, the bacteria and the microbe inside my soil. So when you put plain biochar, when you till it into a soil, you probably won't see any benefits the first year. Usually it's very little. It's the second year, after everything has moved into it, that you start to see the benefits. Now remember, this stays in here, let's say 300 years, just to make it easy. So this is a 300-year coral reef and sponge that you're putting into your soil. So if we're going to till biochar into the soil, what we want to do is we want to preload this with nutrients and microbes before we bury it inside of here. Now if we do that, it becomes a positive. That means that it'll surround the roots and it'll actually start to give off nutrients, microbes, and everything else. It'll be an addition to the soil instead of a negative, instead of drawing away from it. Interesting. So now, let's talk about a lawn. So here's the problem. Now we did a 2-month study on this, looking at the size of biochar inside of a lawn. So let me zoom in just a bit. All right, so here's the problem. I need to get, biochar only works when it's down by the roots. So my roots are about from here. On Bermuda grass, they can go 3 feet down. So I need this stuff to move through. Well, if I put biochar on my lawn, what's going to happen? Nothing. It's going to sit up here in the grass and in the thatch. Okay, let's make it smaller. Still nothing. It's going to sit there on top of the grass. Let's go even smaller. What's going to happen? Nothing. And that's what we found. We found that even taking very, very small biochar and putting it here, it remains in the thatch layer and on top of the soil for months. It doesn't move. And we did our testing on it, and we saw it sit there for over 4 months and never move past really the thatch layer. So, how do we solve that issue? Well, before we go on to solving it, let's talk about why we don't have to preload our biochar on our lawn. Okay, when we put biochar on our lawn, it's going to take a while for it to work down. Now, Humichar works down through the grass and down through the thatch layer very quickly. It gets on top of the soil, and within the matter of a couple weeks, it's going to start to work down into your soil. And that's because it's micronized. But it still has a couple of weeks to sort of sit in here in this thatch layer and upper soil layer. Well, what's in that layer? Good microbes, bacteria, fertilizer we're putting down, everything is up here. So when we put the biochar here, it's going to travel through all that. Guess what? It's going to charge itself. It's going to preload itself. It loads itself with what's on this top layer as it travels slowly down to the soil. Now remember, it takes a long time. You may get ½ an inch a year from your Humichar applications, but there's no other way to do this. There's no other way to actually get that carbon into your soil other than micronizing. So that's why we don't have to preload or pre-charge Humichar when we put it on the lawn. Now understand, Humichar is 2 parts. It's 50-50 biochar and it's 50-50 humic acid. Humic acid has humic acid and has fulvic acid. The humic acid basically goes into your current soil immediately, works down quickly. It helps your own soil hold onto the nutrients. That's the easy way to think of it. The fulvic acid I always say is like the Viagra for plant roots. It helps your plant roots process and gather the nutrients and become more healthy. So I'm taking away the humic acid part, we're just talking about biochar. So let's talk about why, and I can't stress this enough. Some people say you can take biochar, you can crush it down, or it'll work down over time. It takes forever for biochar to work down into turf soil. It takes a long time. Even Humichar, which is a micronized product, will still take months and months to slowly work. Again, I would say about ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch per season. And we do this, we consistently put it out during the growing season. Month after month we apply it. And after about 2 seasons, you're going to start to see that dark soil at about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and you'll be able to use less fertilizer. That's the whole point, just like the garden. Just like the garden, we don't have to use as much fertilizer. Let me show you real quick. First, I'm going to show you what Humichar looks like. It's a DG particle. The DG particle is patented by Anderson's, and they're the ones I went to develop Humichar. As soon as water touches it, it basically starts to explode. So one of these little particles will turn into thousands and thousands of subparticles. And I'm going to show you that happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some water on a plate. I don't think my table's level. And then I'm going to get a camera and I'm going to go close in on this. Cold water. All right, so we're going to go close in on this and we're going to watch this happen. So I'm just going to take Humichar and I'm just going to sprinkle it just a little bit in there. And I want you to watch what happens. The DG particles in this almost immediately start to break down. I would say within, a few minutes you'll start to see it, but you can really sometimes, if I go in there close, you can start to see this action. So you're watching this real time with me. I'm not time lapsing, you're watching this actually happen. That's how fast this stuff breaks down. So now we've got micronized humic acid and biochar already starting to work in. I don't know if you can see that or not. See how fine it is? It's micronized. And that's the only way that it'll actually get down into your turf, is if you micronize it, period. But I want you to look at this. This is pretty amazing here. And you can see what has happened already. Okay, so that's basically how this works. Now, by the way, this doesn't stain really. It's biochar and humic acid will turn your fingers a little bit black, but if you do this and wipe it, it's pretty much off. It's carbon, so it doesn't stain. You might have black marks on your driveway, but they don't stain, they just wash right off. It's not like iron or something like that. Now it's important, let me stress this one point. Biochar contains no nutrients. If you expect to see some kind of reaction on your lawn, if you expect to see some green up or stimulation, you're not going to see it. And that's because biochar is designed to improve your soil slowly over time. The only time you will see an immediate benefit from biochar is in the vegetable garden or flower garden. And that is when you preload it and you get it deep into the soil, because biochar has to be around what? It has to be around the plant's roots to benefit it. You've got to understand that point. So when I till it into my root section down below, it's going to help my vegetable garden and it's going to help my flowers and everything else. I don't care what you have. My roots on this lawn are probably 20 to 30 inches deep. I may get half an inch a year, maybe 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch if I'm lucky, if I put it down real heavy and get a lot of rain. So year after year, I'm going to slowly start to turn my lawn into this dark, rich soil, which I'm telling you, you'll have to use very little fertilizer after you make this soil improvement. It's going to start here in the grass. It's going to work down through the thatch layer, and it's going to start to slowly work down to maybe about here your first year, if you put it on heavy, and slowly over time. Now I want you to see if I can get it to show up. See how red this soil is? That's the natural state of it. That's our natural Georgia red clay soil. You can see the roots, 4 inches down. This is our red clay soil. But what you can start to see, now this area has not had much humichar, but you can see the humichar, the darkening of the soil up in here, and how it started to darken down. But again, this is months later. Morning. It's actually the next morning. I just want to stress one point here. There's a lot of talk about preloaded biochar, and I'm going to stress this point to you. It does not matter when you do a lawn application if biochar is preloaded or precharged, period. Because the larger biochar that is preloaded will not make it down through the thatch layer, period, hands down. It will not do it. It just, unless you're going to ride tractors over it, crush it and crush it and crush it and crush it into micronized form, it's not going to happen. Carbon will not break down unless force is applied to it. You understand that? Carbon will not break down. It's going to stay in its original form. That's why it has to be micronized and put on for a lawn. It's going to take weeks and weeks for it to slowly work down, and you're going to be putting down fertilizers. There's a bunch of microbial activity. There's a bunch of bacteria inside of your lawn, the good stuff. It's going to pick that up as it slowly moves down. You're putting a ton of stuff on your lawn. Hopefully you're putting good stuff on your lawn. It'll pick it up. I mean, this is the proof of it. This right here, this lawn has had PGF Complete, Humichar, and then chicken feed. Now we talk about that chicken feed, the organic matter, in several different videos, and we actually use that process to preload it for our garden before we tilled it in. Of course, the garden has had tremendous results this year. No fertilizer, just making up this super compost with the organic matter and the biochar, the humichar. This garden has had no fertilizer. This has had only the humichar super compost that we make up. There's plenty of videos showing that. And besides the fungus that hits my tomatoes every year, this garden is doing amazing. You can just see the huge amount of produce. Look at all these tomatoes. I mean, it's hundreds and hundreds of tomatoes on here. My yellow squash. This little section of yellow squash has produced over 40 yellow squash already. These are cherry tomatoes from seeds that are about 9 weeks old. No fertilizer, just a humichar comp. Green pepper plants. I've already pulled 30, 40 green peppers off of here. My little cucumber patch. I'm tired of cucumbers. We've already pulled 30 cucumbers out of here. The pea crop. My pea crop is phenomenal this year. Look at all these flowers. All these flowers. Everything that's a flower is going to become a pea. And this area is just loaded with all these flowers. And we've already pulled, gosh, 200 or 300 peas out of here already. And then I have yellow squash, tons of yellow squash in here already. And then zucchinis. Now, the zucchini, we're doing an experiment here. We're kind of letting these guys go just for the heck of it. Look at that thing. So anyways, this lawn, again, Humichar PGF complete. But it's important to note that Humichar can be put down anytime with any other product. So you can put it down every week if you want, all season long. It doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're putting an application down every single month. We're coming out and putting Humichar applications every single month. And our end goal is to reduce the amount of fertilizers and improve the soil health of our lawn, because there's no other way to do it. Not unless you plan to dig up your lawn like a garden and till it up. So that's the whole premise of Humichar, is micronize it so it can get down through. So I'll just go ahead and throw up a bunch of stuff from the other day. If you want to watch it, watch it. If not, click subscribe and go watch Netflix. Talk to you later. Bye. What we use that on. Oh, that must have been when we were doing the garden. So that's Humichar. You touched it?
No.
Smelled it.
It doesn't smell like anything.
Nothing. It doesn't smell like anything.
You just made me like so dumb.
She has to smell it. She's like. But here's the funny thing. You ready? Watch. Mmm, yummy.
I'm not doing it.
You know what it is? It's basically charcoal. It's super refined heated charcoal. That's the main ingredient in it. So no, there's nothing harmful. You don't want to eat it, but you can obviously eat it. You can see the face I'm getting. I'm not eating that stuff. But I just wanted to prove a point that it doesn't smell. There's nothing toxic in it. It's fine around kids. It's fine around pets. I always do that. Hey guys, so I hope that video helped a little bit. Quick note, a lot of people have been asking about the Humichar shirts. I just ordered some shirts online just to have some cheap yard work shirts. But people are like, I want some of those Humichar shirts. So what I did is I uploaded that logo to Teespring, which is a third-party seller. And I linked to it on our website. And when you go through Teespring, long story short, they have margins and profit margins, and I set it to 0. So if you want some cheap yard shirts, I think the double-sided printed Humichar shirt is like 12 bucks. The long sleeve is like 14 or something, and if you need a hoodie, I think they're like 24, and that's double-side printed. And order one size larger because they always shrink. But anyway, someone was asking, I had several people ask if they could get Humichar shirts, so I put that up. Again, it's a third-party seller. We don't have anything to do with it, but they're pretty cool. Anyways, the girls had fun. They're learning the spreaders. This is their brand new to spreaders, so I want them to learn on Humichar, which is safe, before we start really putting them down with PGF Complete, because they need to get a feel for the spreaders. We're going to be cutting. They're going to come out, and we're going to do a lot of reel cutting. So that's coming up. If you were sharp, you saw a little laser on one of the spreaders, and we're doing some stuff with some lasers, helping them train them and keeping the lines. We're doing a bunch of different stuff, so click subscribe, and talk to you later. Bye.